Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
Panic buying is never a good thing.
The Colonial Pipeline debacle winding down.
Concerns are that the federal government, the parish, is going to make them move out of their house.
Livingston Parish still feeling the aftermath of 2016.
We need to make sure that, these dollars are used to put us in a better posture post-pandemic.
Public schools and big COVID relief money.
That's really what the master plan is all about, trying to manage that change, to provide something that's sustainable for the citizens of the state of Louisiana.
The biggest project to restore our coast is a big worry for some.
Hi everyone, I'm Kara St. Cyr.
And I'm Andre Moreau. Right now on SWI, more than a year after federal health officials told us to cover up our faces, the CDC Thursday said that fully vaccinated people could now take their masks off indoors or out, no matter the size of the crowd. It does leave questions about the many not vaccinated, and private businesses and state agencies can keep the mask mandate in place.
It was still great news, and there's more, this time for parents concerned about vaccinations for their kids. Kids ages 12 and up got the go-ahead Thursday to begin receiving the Pfizer vaccine. Moderna and Johnson & Johnson are expected to follow.
Now, Pfizer side effects for kids are about the same as they were for adults. Feeling tired, a headache perhaps. It's all normal, doctors say. No red tape involved either, just a consent form signed by the parent. Dr. Jacob Wood of the Baton Rouge General Medical Center says that this vaccine rollout gets us closer to the end of the pandemic.
There's no reason to be afraid to get your kids vaccinated, and there are multiple benefits: the safety of your kid, the safety of at-risk people who may be around your children, whether that's grandparents or whoever.
Kids younger than 12 still have a ways to go before they can get the vaccine, but officials say they could see that becoming available in the next couple of months.
And now to news making headlines around the state. Governor John Bel Edwards this week urged Congress and the Biden administration to rethink some of its climate change directives, namely those that would hurt Louisiana. His point is to make changes without disrupting responsible oil and gas exploration in the Gulf. Edwards also announced plans for the state to join the U.S. Climate Alliance. The former chief of trauma at LSU Health Sciences in Shreveport got a prison sentence of almost 2 years for fraud. Dr. John T. Owings continued to get disability benefits from Social Security, at times $40,000 a month, even after returning to work. As a doctor, he has always made good money, but reportedly used the excess for personal spending and his coin collecting hobby. In politics, Democrat Representative Troy Carter of New Orleans was sworn into the House this week. The 57-year-old Carter won the seat in a runoff that opened after Cedric Richmond left to work on the team of President Biden. Carter is the only Democratic member of Louisiana's congressional delegation. A new historical marker that honors the late Governor Kathleen Babineau Blanco is now up in her hometown of New Iberia. The governor and lieutenant governor, Billy Nungesser, were there Wednesday for the unveiling to recognize the state's first female governor. Blanco died after battling cancer 2 years ago. The National Hurricane Center has upgraded last year's Hurricane Zeta from Cat 2 to 3 and major status. The storm swept inland near Cocodrie and Grand Isle, then battered the Mississippi and Alabama coasts with a 10-foot storm surge. It killed 5 people and caused $4.4 billion in damage.
You may have seen those long lines of people heading to the gas station and filling up buckets and even grocery bags with fuel over the past week. But Colonial Pipelines is back up and running after being out for 6 days. Experts say it will get back to normal within the next couple of days. But if you happen to see some gas stations with temporary closures, experts say don't panic.
Even if you see a couple of these yellow bags covering a gas pump, it's not a reason to panic. In fact, panicking is exactly what experts don't want you to do right now.
Panic buying is never a good thing. It's always something that we should be discouraging no matter what the situation is with the fuel system.
Nathan McBride with the Louisiana Mid-City Continent Oil and Gas Association is talking about the large crowds of people heading to the gas station after a cyber attack caused Colonial Pipelines to pause their fuel distribution. As an extra precaution, the company stopped operation just to make sure everything was running smoothly. They've since reopened the line, but to some people, that pause meant gas stations might run out of fuel, and it caused a panic in parts of the Southeast.
There are some potential concerns along, as was mentioned earlier, along the pipeline route, especially as you get into the Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia. Those states are starting to see some concerns, but again, that's because they don't have a refining infrastructure within their state. They're supplied heavily from this pipeline.
But here in Louisiana, we do have those resources, and it puts us at an advantage. You see, a little over half of the fuel from Colonial Pipelines passes through Louisiana and Texas oil refineries before it gets to other states, like Virginia, who don't have the same resources. If the pipeline is closed, Louisiana can still refine the oil, but they can't send it up to other states. So right now, we actually have access to more fuel than we can use. So any trouble with gas stations here is only temporary.
While a truck now may have to wait 2 to 3 times longer to get the fuel from the terminals. So it may take longer to get the fuel to your actual local station, but we're not going to run out of fuel.
Natalie Isaacs with the Louisiana Oil Marketers and Convenience Store Association says she doesn't expect anyone to go out of business or see a decline in supply. But she says overpumping your gas and hoarding it can make the problem worse. It'll take a few days for the pipeline to recoup itself after turning on, so it's crucial for people to act normally.
If you need gas, this is what I've been telling people, to get it. If you need it to go to work, fill up. We're all going to be fine if we can just stay in our normal routine with fuel purchases.
The bottom line is experts say don't panic, and if you do decide to fill up on fuel, please use objects that are approved to carry gasoline. The Great Flood of 2016 left behind painful memories of rebuilding and recovery. Now, almost 5 years later, people in both Livingston and East Baton Rouge Parish are reliving the past after some of them got letters from FEMA saying they need to elevate their homes or sell them for demolition.
There's an anxiety that some people feel in Louisiana every time the weather looks like this. But sometimes even a little rain is enough to cause a scare. And it's no wonder. 5 years ago, parts of South Louisiana were underwater.
That was a pretty devastating Saturday here in my house. We woke up Saturday morning to water just coming in this house right here. Got about this high here in the house. So everything was destroyed. And it wasn't just me. I mean, the whole city. All of Livingston Parish got hit, but it was devastating.
John Wascom, a Livingston Parish councilman, watched his home fill with water just like almost everyone else in his district. The 2016 flood left people without homes for months, and for some, years. The recovery process was long. It meant gutting your house and removing memories, or leaving everything behind altogether. It left an impact on the city that most won't forget.
When I say all of Denham, everybody was affected because businesses couldn't open, gas stations were shut down. Roads were completely blocked. People were stranded, trapped on their houses. I mean, my good friends they were 75, 80 years old, had to get in the back of a pickup truck, climb up a ladder, get on the asphalt roof at 2:00 in the morning. And when the rescue sheriff's boats was coming down the Range Avenue to rescue them off of the rooftop of their house.
But years after the rebuilding and the recovery, it seems the people in Livingston Parish can't completely leave 2016 in the past. About 1,200 people in that area got letters from FEMA telling them that they have to either elevate their homes or sell them. Wascom says the disaster relief agency sent these letters out after they found that the parish didn't assess the homes properly in 2016 when people were trying to rebuild.
When they found out here that 3,500 homes that didn't get permitted correctly. And so because of that, that's why we went out of compliance with FEMA. And that, of course, when you go out of compliance with FEMA, that affects your flood insurance programs and premiums and so forth.
To be non-compliant means that your home's flood damage amounts to 50% of what the house was originally worth. It has to be in a high-risk flood zone, and it's below base flood elevation. If you opt out of fixing your home or selling it for demolition, you won't lose your house, but you also won't qualify for aid if your house floods again, and you can't get a permit for future construction.
Because the letter went out, some people are concerned, and here's what some of the concerns are: that the federal government, the parish, is going to make them move out of their house and get no compensation. That's absolutely not true. Another rumor is that the parish is going to make them and require them to elevate their house at their expense. That's absolutely not true.
Getting the letter in the mail isn't a death sentence. There are things you can do. You can apply for grant funding so that FEMA will pay about 75% at the least of the elevation cost. Just being on the list shows you're at least trying to comply. You can also apply for the federal government to buy you out.
If you can come to the Livingston Parish Homeland Security and help us prove that you were not over 50% damaged, then that'll take you off the list. Okay, so that leaves a little bit, that should knock a few of those 1,200 off.
People in East Baton Rouge Parish are also dealing with the issue. It's estimated that the number of homes that fall into the non-compliant category falls somewhere in the thousands. Mayor Sharon Weston Broom hasn't notified that group of people yet. Instead, her office released a statement saying that she won't be releasing those FEMA letters at this time. The letter goes on to explain that she's trying to find another way to keep East Baton Rouge Parish residents in compliance. Mayor Sharon Weston Broom says she'll release the exact number of houses affected in East Baton Rouge Parish once she contacts other officials.
House Bill 528 proposes a public school pilot program with a class schedule that is year-round. I talked with the leader of public schools about that and what's ahead in the fall.
There is a bill originating out of the House of Representatives that allows Louisiana to build a pilot program where a grouping of schools and/or school systems could take part in a pilot program with a balanced calendar. Which essentially takes that traditional 3-month summer break and it places the academic year across 12 months and not 9. It doesn't necessarily add days to the calendar. It just adjusts when those days happen over the course of the year. What we know is that while we can't be certain that it's a game changer academically, we know that summer learning loss does exist. We know that research studies show that you have better attendance, student behavior improves, and oftentimes teacher morale is better on a balanced calendar. And so we are just offering through this legislation the opportunity to support something like this for systems that would like to opt in.
So it would be, you say for systems that would like to opt in, would it be not mandatory or not across the board then?
No, the legislation allows for an opt-in of a handful of systems who would like to try a new approach. And so if the legislation passes, we will build out a pilot program. Systems can opt into that. And one of the things that we would be doing is supporting them as they work through an alternative calendar and also helping to fund some intersession periods where during the time when kids would traditionally be out of school, they could come in for targeted support or maybe elective opportunities like art or music. So we're just exploring the opportunities to shift the traditional school calendar in a handful of systems and explore what findings that come from that And if we get information that tells us that we should be doing one thing or another, we should listen to that information. We have one school system, Red River in North Louisiana, that over the course of the pandemic, we worked with them, and they've already transitioned to a balanced calendar. And if you have conversations with the leadership in that system, those teachers don't want to go back. They appreciate the new calendar. They like it. They think it's effective for their kids. We also have another system that is already preparing to make this transition for next year. If you look at national education scores for Louisiana, we're in the 40s, 48, 49. And our kids are just as capable as kids anywhere. Our teachers and leaders work as hard as teachers and leaders anywhere. We just have to think through some of the systemic issues that we face and some of the challenges that we face. And if this is an opportunity to try something new that has the potential to help kids and improve outcomes and do better for families and communities, I think it's worth a try.
Are schools financially in better shape because of all the COVID bill money than maybe they've ever been?
There is an incredible influx of revenue funding coming into our school systems across the state right now due to the COVID recovery dollars and stimulus dollars. And we just have to make sure that we're using those wisely. These are not recurring revenue sources. We need to make sure that, whatever learning recovery that is needed, we use these dollars to take care of that. We need to make sure that, these dollars are used to put us in a better posture post-pandemic. And for us as a state agency, because we're a flow-through agency and these funds flow through to the systems, we want to make sure that we have a dashboard in place that provides public transparency on where these dollars are being spent statewide, but also within local systems.
What does the fall plan look like?
When you turn on the TV and you look across the country, you see places where kids haven't been in school in over a year. You see places where cities are trying to figure out how we keep kids and employees safe and how do we have an education system. And while it hasn't been perfect in Louisiana, we've managed to do that. Our kids and our employees are safe. Our kids have managed to receive some form of an education this year. And we believe that next year, in terms of mitigation efforts, we're hopeful that it will look more like a normal school year than this present year. And especially with access to the vaccines, that's really important. And we just think that our schools have not been super spreader locations of the virus.
We've officially reached the midpoint of session where lawmakers usually have a general idea of what's going to go into motion and what might be stalled.
The transgender youth's participation in sports bill is making its way to the House for debate, despite the governor's disapproval. He's already stated that he won't be signing this bill if it ends up on his desk. The supporters still insist that the bill is to protect girls in sports from unfair competition, while opposers still believe that this bill would be discriminatory. Tensions flare between members of the Black Caucus and GOP representatives over how kids should learn about topics like racism and sexism in schools. A bill that would prohibit these topics from entering the classroom is stalled while lawmakers debate what to promote in civics and history class. Part of the issue stems from House Education Committee Chairman Ray Garofalo, who said in debate that there are good components of slavery. The Black Caucus said his remarks were enough for him to be removed from his position. Clay Schexnayder, the House Speaker so far, has no plans to remove Garofalo. The dispute is jeopardizing tax debates. New limitations on police immunity from civil lawsuits is under scrutiny this session. Tuesday, the House voted to pass a bill that would restrict qualified immunity for officers facing wrongful death or injury suits. The House voted for the bill 53-42. Louisiana law has some restrictions on where wine manufacturers can ship their product. They can't ship directly to the consumers unless that person buys directly from the winery. Some legislators are trying to change that. Proponents of changing that law argue that Louisiana is dragging behind 44 other states that don't restrict wine shipments in that way, while opponents think they would hurt both retailers and wholesalers. The bill barely passed the House with 53 votes to 40. The next step is the Senate. Louisiana is getting even closer to decriminalizing marijuana. This week in session, the House approved a bill that would take away the possibility of jail time and also lower the maximum penalty fine for people found with small amounts of cannabis. The highest penalty under this bill would only be $100, compared to the possible $300 and $500 penalty fines currently in place. The bill advanced through the House 67-25. The next step is the Senate. If the bill is approved there, then it will end up on the governor's desk to sign.
Each week, we'll give you a wrap-up of what goes on at the Capitol. This session will continue those updates until it ends in June.
The nearly $2 billion plan from coastal restoration leaders expected to inject life into the state's vanishing coast has plenty of controversy. The Mid-Barataria diversion project last month got a resounding no vote from the parish where the project will happen. That vote came after the Army Corps of Engineers' initial environmental impact statement of the plan was mostly positive. So where are we now? I went to find out.
The people of Plaquemine Parish do not want it.
It's been a month since this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, where emotions ran hot and a unanimous 8-0 vote opposed the Mid-Barataria plan by the state's CPRA. Fishers and shrimpers say the plan will destroy their way of life.
It is the only sustainable way to save your parish.
That was the response from CPRA Chairman Chip Klein. The centerpiece plan to channel land building sediment and rich Mississippi River water through a mega-gated levee structure in Plaquemines is a major part of the effort to sustain Louisiana's coast as we know it, from eventually washing away into the Gulf of Mexico. CPRA Executive Director Bryn Haas says we know much has already been lost. A fourth of our wetlands, an area about the size of the state of Delaware, has been lost since the 1930s.
We've seen the change along our coast that's occurred for the last 100, really thousands of years, but more explicitly so over the last 100 years or so since we've levied the river and isolated it from its coastal wetlands. So we know that this coast is changing. It's going to change whether we implement any of the projects in the master plan or none of them, including this project, the Mid-Barataria Sediment Diversion Project. So we really have a choice. We can ask ourselves, do we allow that change to impose its will on us and where we can live, where we can work, where we can catch fish? Or do we try to manage that change, hopefully for the most good, for the most citizens of the state of Louisiana? That's really what the master plan is all about, trying to manage that change, provide something that's sustainable for the citizens of the state of Louisiana so that we can continue to do the things that we love along our coast.
The council says, what about what they and millions of others love? A seafood-based economy and culture.
The process that we're trying to harness is one that was 7,000 years in the making. It's what created all of southeast Louisiana. The power of the river, the transport of the sediment that's within the river, the fresh water, the nutrients that's there, built literally the ground that we're standing on right here today. And so the sooner we can reproduce that process, reconnect the river with its estuary, absolutely we're ready to go and get those wetlands beginning to get rebuilt and begin to heal that estuary.
The project is designed to build 21 square miles of storm buffering land in the Barataria Basin over 50 years. Council members say the Army Corps draft statement ignores what they say is a faster, better alternative: dredging sediment from the river and pumping it over the levee in the basin's open waters. The Corps impact statement acknowledges the drastic alteration for shrimp and oyster fisheries, but says the creation of this land outweighs that disruption. Barataria Diversion Manager Brad Barth.
Okay, can you tell us what's positive, what's not positive?
In terms of positive and not positive,
Sure.
in terms of impacts and so forth?
Right.
Yeah, so obviously positive impacts, storm surge reduction, wetland benefits, ecosystem benefits, those types of things. In terms of negative impacts, you've probably heard it in terms of marine mammals and dolphins, oysters, shrimp, environmental justice, and communities that are outside of flood protection are some of the big ones there in terms of impacts.
How do these people who earn their livelihoods, who have been the loudest against this, how do they adjust and not get hurt so bad?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges there is that we have a coast that's constantly changing. And so the coast that you knew 20, 30, 40 years ago is not the coast you know today, and it's not going to be the coast that we know in the future 20 or 30 years. So one of the things that we've been trying to do as an agency is coordinate with Wildlife and Fisheries and some other efforts with the governor's direction in terms of getting feedback and input from the fishers and the fishermen and the seafood industry of the things that would be important to them to have a sustainable and viable business and industry with our changing coast. And part of that would be with our restoration projects or such as a project as a diversion. So kind of working with them of what's important to them, short-term, medium-term, long-term, so we can help put the toolbox there for a sustainable coast in terms of ecosystem and also seafood and fisheries and so forth. One of the things that we'd like to pride ourselves on is monitoring our coast. So as part of the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, we have over 360 monitoring stations across the coast to check anything from water levels to temperatures to salinities to the types of vegetation that grow in different areas. So we can, on a year in, year out basis, see how our coast is changing, and then we can adapt to it in terms of the types of projects to do or projects locations. And the same thing goes with the sediment diversion there. And we'll have that data and information to help support for what we see with whatever gets thrown at us in terms of climate change in the future, that we can adjust and adapt as well as a state.
This project is kind of about hitting the reset button again and trying to make some portions of the coast that currently aren't very productive, quite frankly, for some of the resources that people are concerned with. Oysters is a primary one of those because they're too salty right now. It'll actually help freshen some of those areas and shift that zone of productivity back towards the Gulf of Mexico where it once was.
The people who make a living off the waters say the infusion of fresh water will kill their way of life. Public comment goes for another month. Then the Corps will deliver a final environmental impact statement about a year from now. Construction could begin in late 2022. And everyone, that is our show for this week. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime, wherever you are, with our LPB app.
You can catch LPB News and public affairs shows as well as other Louisiana programs you've come to enjoy over the years. And please like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
For everyone here at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Moreau.
And I'm Kara St. Cyr.
Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.